For the thousands in attendance and the millions watching around the world, we are live and amplified. So let's get ready to podcast.
Fire it up.
Welcome, everybody, to another live and amplified livecast. I'm your host, Tom Quiet, and we are coming to you live. I'm in Waco, Texas, and our guest today is coming from Toronto, Canada. We have a very special guest, Voimaa. How's it going today, Voimaa?
Hey, it's going pretty good. How are you today, Tom?
Doing pretty good. It's nice and early. The birds are chirping. Sun's not quite up yet, but, you know, it's 9 o'clock, so I'm still trying to get used to that the sun's not quite up yet. But so you're currently in Toronto, Canada, but you're from Russia, correct?
No, not exactly. So I have a fun history. I'm a first-generation Canadian.
Okay.
And the closest thing you could say I'm from to is Ukraine, but really my family's from a country that doesn't exist anymore, from the Soviet Union.
Okay.
So it's a different culture in a way, really.
Okay.
It's interesting being from somewhere that isn't anymore.
Gotcha. What country was that you were from?
So as I say, my folks, the area of the Soviet Union they were from was Ukraine.
Okay.
So I was born in Canada.
Okay.
And I was a first generation Canadian.
Okay, gotcha.
And so as I say, like it's interesting because I was raised in this hodgepodge of cultures.
Okay.
It had like the Soviet Union subculture was very particular that I was raised in, and then also the Canadian stuff, and I'm Jewish as well. So it's yeah.
Gotcha.
It's a long identity tag.
Yeah, understood. Sorry, I got that mixed up, but
no, that's fine.
So let's start off with the basics.
Yeah.
What got you into music?
God. So I got into music kind of in steps. When I was growing up, we only had 3 genres in the house. There were only 3 allowed because that's what the intellectuals listened to, and being an intellectual is the biggest hype in, a Jewish Soviet household that is self-respectable. And then I discovered Michael Jackson, and I was like, music can sound like not 3 chords or not, this very complicated array of classical music.
Mm-hmm.
And like there's a beat. I didn't know drums existed in this way. And then I discovered indigenous music, because it was kind of like Michael Jackson was a bit taboo in the house because it's not respectable music, it's pop music. So it's like, okay. The indigenous kind of culture and everything is pretty well respected. It's there's a long indigenous studies reason for why indigenous culture is respected in certain cultures, such as former Soviet culture. So I got into that music, and then I discovered my instrument via like a film score, and then that's it. Like that was where the snowball started rolling really improperly, and I started getting into all sorts.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And so would you say Michael Jackson is like a influence to you, or just no?
It was just he was the door through which I stepped into Western music.
Okay.
And then like the main influences then for me became more instrumental things, and then when I was older, Lady Gaga became massive for me.
Mm-hmm.
So like my biggest like love for years was, and to this day, is Yanni.
Okay.
Like there's a 12-year-old me was going around like listening to this, synthy, cheesy stuff with joy. It's really odd.
Nice. And so how has your more traditional exposure to music through like more what I would call classical or traditional music? How's that kind of helped?
Sorry, I didn't quite hear that because the internet cut out.
Oh, my bad. How is your exposure to more classical or native music helped mold the type of musician that you are now?
I mean, I didn't really like the kind of music that we had in the house when it came to stuff with words.
Mm-hmm.
The words were really great, but the actual music really annoyed me because it was usually over like 3 or 4 chords. It was a kind of Russian bardic music. So the thing that I liked the most that was allowed in the house as a child was classical music. And I didn't like jazz either unless it was like horns or stuff specifically, but like I didn't like jazz piano or anything like that. So the intricate melodies that you hear in classical music, I think they forever imprinted themselves, even if I'm not a huge fan of classical music for the sake of just listening to it, rather than like looking at it for theory or whatever. It imprinted on me for life. And as for indigenous music, well, I mean, one of the bands that really shaped what I do, and like to this day I really enjoy it was this band called Alborada Peru, and they shaped everything because like I was when I started playing and stuff, I was learning by ear, and there wasn't a whole lot of resources, and they were what came up when you searched native music as a 12-year-old, right?
Yep.
And so like I learned by listening to them and repeating what they were doing, and eventually I got into certain habits of playing, but they were also molded kind of with then later the Western or more Western stuff I was listening to. So it all became a weird blend of stuff. Like it's very random influences that all came together to create something different, as far as I can tell. I haven't found anybody who does what I do yet.
Gotcha. So as I was kind of looking through your electronic press kit last night,
Mm-hmm.
the first thing I noticed was you have a whole slew of music that you've released as far as like EPs,
Yeah.
and stuff. So I want to kind of take a few minutes and talk about your creative process. What is your creative process?
If only I knew. It sounds terrible. I mean, for the first several EPs, I wasn't really breaking any rules so far as playing the native flute. Like I was doing what everybody else does because I was 14, 16 and just getting into it, and I didn't know you could do anything else. So that was just, you found a backtrack or you made a backing track, which usually wasn't too complicated and pretty airy, wavy, and whatever. And then you improvised over it and you called that a song, which is what most people do today. And, it's this new age style of doing it. It is not traditional in any way, shape, or form. And people make that mistake. So I always want to point that out. I have a lot of respect for the history of this instrument. And, I can't stand when people say that this is the traditional way to play it. It's a new age way to play it. So that was my creative process for a long time. And then the more I was playing it in private and doing what I wanted to hear and like improvising, doing more upbeat stuff, I was like, I don't know. I want to do something that translates how I feel into music. But of course, because nobody's doing it with an instrument like mine, it started off with me kind of working with my producer Mark Marilanen, and he would make beats for me and I would improvise over them, and then sometimes after a long slew of failed improvisations that I just wasn't happy with, I would hit something, we would quickly hit record. So that was like the creative process behind songs like Be Mine. It was like, oh, that sounds great, let's get it now.
Yeah.
Before I forget,
Yeah.
because I forget as soon as I write something, anything good, I will forget it right away, and then I have to listen and teach myself how to play it over and over again.
Oh, wow.
And then for the EP Voimaa, which is like my baby, and I'm very proud of everything on there, I try to put a lot more thought, and I worked on creating my own backing tracks. I used Logic and whatever, and I went through the motions over and over and over again until I found chord progressions that I liked. And, Mark Merlanen did the same. He helped me out on that one as well. Yeah, there was like lots of trial in there, really, until I found things that I thought I could write something meaningful to, rather than just, random chance. So it's changed a lot over the years, definitely.
Nice, awesome. And then how's so when you were recording these albums or EPs, what was that process kind of like? Like, I mean, you kind of touched on it already, but what was when you were ready to step into the studio to record those? Was it you wrote specifically for the album, or did you just have a bunch of songs that you chose from and said, okay, like ABC?
No, neither.
Okay.
First album I ever did, which was Eluna,
Mm-hmm.
I believe. I was way young. I don't even remember when I put that out. And it wasn't like put out in a big way either. I was like, Mark, I need backing tracks. I'm going to be famous now. And I was like, yeah, sure you are. Here you go. And so I walked in the studio never having heard those tracks, and I improvised over all of them. Like my main thing is improvisation. It's the thing I feel most comfortable with, truthfully.
Yeah.
So I just came in and wrote whatever I felt like on the day, and that's what went on the album. And then the second go around for Lacuna, that was more like tracks were sent back and forth, or I would come into the studio and he would have like several tracks ready to go, and we'd write together, kind of like I'd improvise over something until I'd go, all right, we got something, let's go record it now before I forget.
Nice. And what's one thing we really like to do is try and help younger musicians and bring them a little bit of value to kind of learn from people that are currently doing music as a
Yeah,
career
for
choice.
sure.
So what advice do you have for younger musicians?
I'm going to give advice specifically to young women in the music industry because I think it's important.
Okay.
So when you start off in the music industry, most people will tell you to hit up your local scene, and they are right to do so. Go to your open mics, connect with local people, work together, blah, blah, blah. But the thing is, for young women, this is a difficult terrain to navigate safely. And so I would just want to give a heads up to young women that if you are in a position where anybody is, so to speak, if anybody is in a position of power over you, that's not a necessarily safe relationship, and you have to be very clear with your boundaries from day one, because if you're not, people will take advantage of you, and it can cause a lot of problems for you later down the line. And then the second thing is to people in general, young folk, the music industry requires that you know how to read a contract well. If you don't know how to read a contract and you think you're hitting the deal of a lifetime, stop, think, and read the contract. Or hire a lawyer. They're like $100 to $200. Get an industry lawyer. And make sure that you're not getting screwed, because everybody has been scammed once or twice in this industry, and the fewer times that happens to you, the better. And then, one last piece of advice that really helped me. I don't know if they have it in every state or, in every place around the world, but generally speaking, there are some amazing music conferences that allow you to showcase. Which means that usually it's like in a hotel, and like every hotel room is its own concert venue, so to speak. You can get 15-minute sets. If you can get involved in those showcases, you are most likely to get booked for festivals eventually. So, target showcases like here in Canada, we have Folk Music Ontario, and internationally, I know there's Folk Alliance International. That's definitely in the States. So I don't know if you guys can find something like that for your genre. Do it. It's worth it. It costs money, but do it.
Nice.
Yeah, that's what I got.
No,
Hopefully some of it is useful.
No, it's all useful. because it's all coming from experience, and so I'm sure it's very useful to somebody out there.
I
Uh,
mean, like this whole thing with getting into the music industry and like any arts industry, you could go to college for it, and if you can, you should. But good lord, you have to make mistakes to learn, and if you can learn off of somebody else's mistakes, all for the best.
yep,
Like I don't
absolutely.
think you have to make your own in order to be successful.
That is very true. Um, no, we do have several national like conferences,
Mm,
but as far as like individual states, that it just depends on
yeah.
the state for the most part.
Do you
Like I
guys
know,
have them for different genres?
mainly it's like depending on what city, there will be like in I know Nashville they have like songwriter rounds, which is
Mm-hmm.
kind of like you know the same basic premise. And then, but as far as like conferences, it's usually just either independent music or it's like usually it'll fall under the independent music
Right.
umbrella. And then, like, whoever they're cool with having there is who they'll have there, like, as far as like a genre goes.
Makes sense. Yeah, I love those conferences to bits. They're exhausting, but they're wonderful. They're like I've never experienced anything like it. Like
Yeah.
my first international one, I was losing my marbles.
Yeah. I know CD Baby has one coming up here, not too far from where I'm
What?
at. They have like an or a DIY, like a DIY conference type thing, and so I'm hoping to go check that out. I think it's during the summer sometime,
Dude.
so that'll be interesting.
Yeah, that would be interesting. It'd be great if like somebody out there in the universe could put together a giant Excel spreadsheet of all these conferences for young musicians who don't know that they exist. Because I think that'd be a great resource for like the global musical community.
Yeah,
Just like
yeah,
open source spreadsheet.
yeah. That'd be actually that's a really good idea there. Hold on
Yeah.
a minute, let me write that down. No, because one thing that we're working on is like I keep seeing all these that I don't want to call them scams because it's not fair to say that
Mm,
they're scams, but they compile a list of like venue promoters that are actively looking or supposedly actively looking to bring in new musicians. But when you pay the money, get the PDF or the Excel spreadsheet, I'll get
yeah.
it out eventually. It's pretty much just all like generic emails like band submission at whatever the name of
Yeah.
it's just stuff like that. And it's like, okay, well, I could have Googled that and, there's nothing stopping anyone from doing that. So what I'm working on is a little bit more of a personal, like, so you have a contact name, you have a contact phone number, you have the name of the venue, what type of music they're looking for. And then like, if that's the only email they have, that's fine. But at least you have this other information to make it a little bit more personable. But some of these other things that I've seen,
Yeah.
it's just the name of the venue and an email, and it's like, well,
It's ridiculous. And the problem is, with a lot of things, they don't want unsolicited stuff. Like, it's the only way, in my experience, you're going to get anywhere in terms of submissions is if you've made a personal connection somewhere, somehow, or, they've heard your music, that, for them, booking you is an investment. It's a serious investment because sometimes they've got to pay accommodation, travel, your actual fees. If you've got a band, that's going to be costly, and insurance for the show, blah blah blah, event planning. So why in God's name would anybody invest in something they don't 100% trust, like in this case?
yeah,
So
absolutely.
you have to have rapport, and that's the other thing that you have to be very conscious of.
Yeah, very, very true. Um, so as we're kind of still on this topic, what's one thing musicians, younger musicians in general, need to know before they step into the studio for the first time?
Oh, one thing.
Or yeah, I mean, if you've got a bunch of things, go for it.
Know your sound tech's name always.
Yep.
Be respectful. Don't come in high or drunk. This is not fun time. You are there to work. Imagine you've come into an office to come and do a job. You are there not to waste time. This isn't like a lot of young folks have this dream of like what a studio is. Like, oh my God, I'm in a studio and like I'm gonna be famous tomorrow. No, it's a workspace that people put a lot of effort in, and you shouldn't be disrespectful of that. Also, bring water, but don't put any liquids on any of the equipment. Don't touch any of the equipment without permission. People have set things up to accommodate you. And always be prepared. If you can be, like, especially if you're a vocalist, know your lines, know what you're singing, know the melody, and warm up, be ready to work. I think that's the most useful thing I can offer, really, because, it's it's an environment you learn to navigate with time more than anything else. But yeah, just don't be a dick. Yeah. Am I allowed to say that? Don't be a dick.
You're good. You're like there's really no limitations as to what you can say on here. Like it's no rules essentially. But the one thing that I want to reiterate is be respectful to your sound tech and make sure you have done research on who your sound tech has worked with before, because I've heard several situations where they just found a guy or a girl that was the cheapest, and then they come back and it's like, this sounds terrible, and it's like, well, you didn't do your research. You just took the guy that would give you the best rate, and that's not always
the guy that you pay with pizza is not the guy who's going to help you make your record.
Yep,
like people go to school to become sound techs. They spend 3 to 4 years in college or university paying tons of money learning how to mix you so that you don't sound like garbage.
Yep. So. They put a lot of time, they put a lot of effort, and you need to respect their ability. And anybody that's willing to do it for peanuts, I'm not saying that there isn't good sound techs that'll do it for peanuts, because there's definitely is. I know how our thing is set up, we definitely do it for cheap, but we've got a really good setup going. So, but it just, the guy that you meet randomly on Facebook, make sure you do your research.
You just reminded me though.
Okay.
I don't know about y'all, but here, colleges and universities that teach sound and music and whatever, they usually have studios, and those students are always looking for acts to practice on, and that might be if you're looking for a cheap way to get a passable or sometimes even really good recording session, or a mix of a song, you can reach out to those guys, and then you make connections hopefully for life with people who are coming up together with you, and that's a way to get it maybe cheaper and reliable.
Very true. Schools are using the college, university, and I don't want to say using, but you're kind of using benefiting. There you go. Benefiting from a university program is always a great way to go, because they're always looking for something to help their students get hands-on experience in whatever their specialty is. And sometimes it turns out really good, sometimes turns out okay. You just have to be.
The other thing for it is also music videos. It's the same thing, and marketing, using the university network, helping each other out. If you walk in there with no to low expectation, treat it like a practice session for yourself, if anything else, like a practice session for when you get to the big wigs. Only good can come of it. At the best end of it. And if you know, you set your expectations low and your expectations are met, well, that's where your expectations were at.
Yeah, very true. Very, very true. So where are you at right now, writing wise? Are you working towards another
Yeah,
album, or where are you at currently?
I am. I'm mid composition right now
Okay.
of a new record. This past year has been really tumultuous for me, which was really unpleasant in the moment, but in hindsight makes for great, phenomenal writing
Yeah.
material. So I have about 10 tracks or so that I've put together at the moment, and they're in their rough stages. So I'm looking forward to working with new producers and new artists who will remain nameless for the time being
Hmm.
until everybody's confirmed. And I want to put out a a full length album that's got a theme and a purpose. You know, like the EP Voimaa was kind of uh, uh, a projectile of everything that I wanted people to know about me.
Hmm.
In kind of like in 5 words or less, describe yourself. That was that EP.
Hmm.
That's why it's self-titled. This next one, I want to um, I want to put into music what I believe the human condition is about. You know,
Hmm.
it's something that most folk ponder at some point in their life, I presume, and so do I. And I think about it a lot. So this past year has really given me food for thought on the subject. So yeah, that's kind of what I'm working on.
Sweet, sweet. So when you sent me that little sheet of the interesting facts, the one thing that really stood out to me was that you bought your I I don't think we've actually said it, but you primarily play flute, correct?
Yeah, I play a very specific kind of flute. I don't just
You
play flute. I play
you play
Native American flute. Yeah.
yep, Native American flute. Um and we'll get to that here in a few minutes, but the one thing that stood out to me was that you bought your first flute at Toys R Us.
Yeah.
That's awesome. What
Yeah.
what was it that, like, kind of what was the draw to buying that flute, and or was it something that you had been thinking about for a while? Like, what was kind of the
Oh, I saved up for that. Okay, so it's a mixed story, as nothing with me is simple. Um, it was around the time where I discovered Alborada Peru, and I had first heard the instrument, you know, kind of same time in a film score, which is Where the Spirit Lives, which is, by the way, a movie that everybody should watch. Um, and like, I love the sound, and I wanted it. Like, 12-year-old me just some switch. You know how in kids like switches flip and they're like, I want that and only that, and nothing else will suffice until I have the that.
Mhm.
It was in that vein of things. So I told my mom that now I shall be taking the $150 flute from eBay, please, and she said, to hell you will. So I did my research and I found that there was a first act. Do you guys have first act in the States?
Not that I'm aware of, but that doesn't
It's
mean that it's like not a regional thing
for
somewhere.
the okay, well, for those who aren't in the know, first act is a very common brand here of beginner children's instruments. So, like, they'll do guitars, drums, ukuleles, that sort of
Mm.
thing. And at the time, for some random reason, they had a first act Native American flute, which I
Mm.
still have somewhere.
Nice,
um and it was cheapy and it didn't play in tune at all. I loved it with all my heart.
nice.
Yeah, so
And so you were 12, right, when you bought that?
11
Or
or 12. Yeah,
yeah,
I was in 7th grade.
okay, cool.
Yeah.
So you play the native flute, which wasn't when you first told me that, it wasn't completely uncommon to me, because for about 3 months a couple years ago, I was really into Mickey Free, who he was originally got his name from playing with Prince. He was part of Prince's like
Uh,
musical crew, and then he, after all that kind of went away, he started playing the Native American flute.
Huh.
And I found that out. I was listening or watching an interview with him because they were talking about a Dave Chappelle skit that he was prominently featured in.
Mm-hmm.
And then towards the end of the interview, he broke out his native flute and started playing some music. And I thought it was really interesting. So for about 3 months, I got into it and just kind of explored what all that was about.
Into him specifically, or in general, other flute players?
Just him specifically, and then I would like pick up some other musicians, but it was just pretty much because of him. I started listening to it, and yeah.
Kudos,
It was really interesting. It was a little weird from my standpoint initially, but then once I got into it and started to understand everything, it was really cool.
Well, I think it's brilliant because one of the main reasons I do what I do is because I find that this instrument, it's indigenous to Canada before Canada was Canada, and to North America.
Mm-hmm.
It's cross-border because its history, as far as I know, starts from the Anasazi flutes way down south. And you don't really hear about it. Like, I'm glad that you've heard about it because when people, especially when bigwigs, break it out, that makes me really happy. I'm happy to hear that.
Yeah, it was and I think what really stood out was because the reason they were there was so the reason he was there, and then when he broke it out, it was so like opposite of each other because he was there primarily
out of left field.
Yeah, it was out of left field. Like he was there talking on a hip hop YouTube channel, and then he starts breaking out the Native American flute, and it's like,
I gotta say though, it's not out of left field in that case at all.
Okay.
Because I have worked with hip hop groups specifically to create loops on my flute, and then they sample them and make tracks using them all the time. And I'm not the only one. Like instrumental music, flutes, horns of any variety, they are well placed in hip hop. And
oh wow.
The history of hip hop, not that I'm an expert on it, is so diverse in terms of the sounds that go into it that I don't know. It doesn't strike me as left field at all in that case.
Oh wow, I didn't know that. That's awesome. That's you just taught me something. That's great.
Well, I'm happy to. No, hip hop's great, man. It's I love the concept of hip hop. I don't listen to it often. I play with a couple groups. They're kind of like seasonal groups. They disband and reband under a new name every year.
Quite frequently, yeah.
Yeah, with like a new conglomerate. But I don't know. Like I look at what they do and how they do it. Like the best I can do is go and play what they need me to play. But how the folks express themselves in hip hop, I have nothing but respect. And what people use to make like the tracks is creativity.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But one thing that you have a very close relationship, or you work very closely with your flute maker, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, God bless him.
Is that something that's common amongst Native American flute players, or is that just something that's more you like?
Oh no, people. I mean, different strokes for different folks, right? Everybody who plays has a different take on the instrument in terms of what they want from it. Folks who are more experienced, often when they'll order a flute, they'll say what they want to, kind of like what wood or what key, blah blah blah. Other people will be very specific and be like, I want offset holes, and I want it to be painted this way, and I want the, slow air chamber to be this, and all sorts of stuff. And I want the block to be this shape, and I want, and other folks will just buy a flute and be happy with it. And there's no right or wrong way of having a relationship with a flute maker unless you're being a dick to them, which again, I reiterate, don't be a dick.
Yeah. Exactly. And obviously with it being Native American flute, different tribes have different
Nations.
nations have different ways they like their flute set up, correct?
Mm,
Or is it pretty common?
not really. I
No.
mean, again, I don't feel like the expert on this, even
Okay.
though maybe I should be. But from what I know, from south to north, there are many different kinds of functions traditionally for the flute. Some are courting flutes, others are for private use, others are, for performance and whatever. And every nation has a different take on the use of the flute. But then when it comes to makes, there's, and these are arbitrary names, they don't come from any historic background. There's plain style and woodland style flute, and that just indicates there's a little groove in one of the elements of the flute called the bird, and sometimes the groove will be in the bird and that will be channeling there, or sometimes the groove will be in the flute itself. And again, like, I don't believe, but I might be wrong, so listeners take heed, that those belong to any particular nation. An individual who does know, though, if anybody wants to find out more from a reliable source, not me, would be John Norris, and also flutetree.com. They have an extensive history of everything.
Awesome.
So I never want to give wrong information, but I also want to leave people with some information.
Awesome. We appreciate that. It's you never never know until you ask.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And like, that's the thing is, I'm not indigenous, so I also come with it with a grain of salt, with the fact that anything I know might be completely wrong.
Yeah, understood. So let's take a step back from the music for a minute. When you're not playing music, what do you do for fun? What do you do to let the stress out, when you're not playing music?
Ooh, I like to translate. I'm a huge fan of languages, and I like animals. I have 2 pet rats. I love them. They're very fluffy. They're looking at me right now. Well, sort of. They're sleeping, but they're sleeping in my direction.
Nice.
So yeah, I really love learning languages, translating languages, all sorts of stuff.
Nice. And you speak primarily English, but you also know Russian?
I'm fluent in both languages.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Russian was my first.
Okay. Awesome. Are you conversational in any other languages, or have you tried to learn any other languages?
Oh yeah. When I was a kid, I spoke pretty fluent French. Now I understand it. Same with Spanish. Like, if you speak Spanish to me, I'll probably understand what you're saying. There's other languages too. I lose track because living in a multicultural community, you just sort of pick stuff up. Like, I can read Portuguese, but Brazilian Portuguese, not Portuguese. And I really like Latin. I've been learning lots of Latin, and because Latin is the antecedent to so many different languages, even if I don't speak a language, I can kind of infer from context what people are saying, because so much has sprung up from it.
Yep. I kind of picked up a little bit of, like, I understand the essence behind some Spanish because I lived in New Mexico for 4 years, and yes, it's still in the U.S., but a lot of people speak Spanish there.
Yeah, so there's a lot of flow.
And so I just kind of had to, if somebody was mad at me, I had to kind of pick up the tone. Like, I understand the tone. If they come at me and they're speaking to me, I kind of understand, okay, this person's mad at me. Why are they mad at me?
Yeah.
Even, and then, I would pick up like little keywords. And so, it's amazing how quickly you can pick stuff up when you're just in the community just like in the environment. Whereas when I was younger, I tried to learn a second language. I was trying to learn French at one point, but
you poor sod.
But because nobody around me spoke French, it was just like, okay, I started learning like the basic language structure, but because I had nobody to speak it to, it was just kind of like, okay, I'm learning something and then I'm losing it because, I'm going to sit in my room and speak French to myself. Like, that's a little weird, but.
No, I feel you. When I was growing up, pretty much everybody on our street spoke Spanish.
Mm-hmm.
And they were all from a different country too. It wasn't like they were all from Mexico. There was like Mexico, Cuba, Colombia, like
Mm-hmm.
everything under the sun, Argentina, all sorts. So everybody had different accents as well. But the common thing was that usually at least one of the parents did not speak English.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're hanging out at their house, that parent would be the stay-at-home parent, and the one telling you off in Spanish.
Yep. My
You
dad
better figure it out.
Yep. My dad has a similar situation because he's a pilot, or he was a pilot, and he flew to South America a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And so as he was kind of learning Spanish, he had picked up this hodgepodge of different languages and dialects of Spanish. So he would go to like Puerto Rico, Mexico, Colombia, Peru. And so he's like picking up all these different styles of, like, especially in the Caribbean there. And then like you'd go to Mexico every once in a while.
Mexico is so funny. Like, it's
Yeah.
so different from Peruvian.
Yeah.
I have got 2 classmates. One's Mexican, one Peruvian. And I struggle to understand the Peruvian, but I'm fine with the Mexican.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
They're so different. It's funny.
Yeah. It's, my dad got caught because he said something that was more Peruvian than Mexican to a Mexican guy, and it got taken out. It was, so he just kind of started learning to understand instead of speak, because if he got anything mixed up,
he's screwed.
Yep, pretty much.
Yeah. Oh no! Like I pleasantly surprised one of my fellow classmates, and he was like, "¿Cómo estás?" And I was like, "Más o menos." He's like, "Ah," because it's like a Mexican expression.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, "Más o menos," which just means like so. Like I'm okay.
Yeah.
And it, those small things though, like, I don't know, it fascinates me because, so like I'm a fluent Russian speaker, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I'm first generation Canadian.
Mm-hmm.
Which means that the Russian I speak is about 25 years old, give or take, because it's a Russian that came with my family from the Soviet Union. So now when I speak to my friends in Ukraine or Russia, they don't always understand the expressions that I'm using because they're so outdated. And it's amazing how languages change and evolve. They're like the creatures more than they are abstract entities in many ways.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
It's brilliant. Mm-hmm. Wonderful.
Yep. So as I don't want to try and date the podcast, although this is going to be released tomorrow and it's not really going to be that dated, but how's the coronavirus pandemic? How's that currently affecting you? I know we briefly talked about it yesterday when we were.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm currently dealing with some health issues, as I said earlier. This past year was tumultuous. That was because I suffered some nasty internal organ damages earlier this year, and it's a slow recovery. But it doesn't impact my immune system. It just impacts my ability to kind of go out and do stuff. It's a slow recovery. So I'm kind of sitting indoors, and I'm not too afraid of this coronavirus, but I'm looking outside, and it's just a little bit ridiculous. Like, here's the thing, the most important thing, that's not affected so much me, but the music industry in the local scene, is people are losing gigs left, right, and center.
Yep.
Because of the coronavirus, and because you can't be in gatherings of more than 250 people. Even though the grocery store clearly is not a place of gathering for multiple people. I don't know how that's supposed to work.
Yep.
And that means that lots of folks are trying to find alternative ways to make money and to have shows without having any people there. So everything is turned to live stream, which is great for me, as horrible as that sounds, because I've been stuck indoors for the past 4 bloody months. Going, oh, that's a gig I wish I could have gone to. Oh, that's a gig I wish I could have played. And now people are live streaming stuff. I'm like, great, you people are finding alternate solutions.
Yep.
And then
last night, there was like 4 bands that we've worked with that were live streaming, and so I'm sitting here trying to jump between the 4 of them, just to, just to be like, hey, I'm here to support you, but I've got like 4 others that are playing in the background. So it's like this weird hodgepodge of like indie folk rock, bluegrass, singer-songwriter and then like country. And so it's just like, all right, that's funny.
No, the it's what a weird world we live in. The one
Yeah.
thing I am sad about though is that they did cancel the Junos, which are like our Grammys.
Mm-hmm.
And there is an amazing artist who I've been supporting for years who is gonna be on the main stage and performing, and she's not gonna get the chance to do that. Her name's Iskoe, by the way, and if people want to check her out, she is phenomenal, absolutely incredible. And it's like, now if Iskoe could live stream, that would be the bonus here.
Yeah. And like seeing everybody live stream just to try and offset some of the costs, like some musicians, this is what they do for their livelihood. This is 100% how they make their money. And then you got some musicians that haven't quite made that commitment, that aren't hurting quite as bad. Like, yeah, it sucks that they're losing gigs, but they're not quite hurting as bad because they have a 9-to-5 gig or whatever. But still seeing everybody, like there's a few different musicians right now that were in the middle of a tour and now they're stuck. Well, not stuck, but they're just kind of sitting in limbo wherever they're at. And that's like,
I know a couple people like that as well. And a tour isn't something you plan overnight. It's something you plan for like half a year, you know, and all of that just gets thrown up in the air. And visa costs are expensive, even through the union. So like, it's like, I mean, jokes aside, this is shit.
Yeah.
It's shit. And it's shit for everybody. And it's shit for the people who are ill. It's shit for the people who are panicking, who don't understand that 90% of them aren't at risk, but what they carry might put others who are at risk.
Yeah.
So they don't need to freak out. They just need to be sensible.
Yeah.
But I do have good news.
Okay.
Because I went to the grocery store yesterday.
Uh-huh.
And most of it is well stocked and intact, and people here are, at least in my area, are behaving like human beings.
Yeah. That's something. I had some things when I went to Walmart yesterday in Waco, Texas. Everybody was, like when I went in there, it was like, oh, this is just a normal Saturday at Walmart.
Yeah.
Like, okay, cool. But you get into these weird pockets of the different aisles, and like the weirdest things were sold out.
Right.
And so I'm sitting there, like I'm going down, like I knew they were going to be out of toilet paper, but I was just like, you know what? I'm going to go see. And if there's
this history in the making.
Yep, pretty much. And if there's like a chance that I could pick up even like a 4-roll just in case, like, I mean, I'm pretty set, but like just in case for whatever reason, I just want to have that one extra 4-pack. But so I went down there and obviously that was sold out, but I went to the back and like all the lunch meat was sold out, which was really weird, but all the bread was still there. And it's like, what are you guys making with this lunch meat that is gone? And then like I went to the way back where they keep like all the produce, so like all the milk and eggs and all that stuff, and all that stuff was still there. And I'm like, okay. Like, I mean, I remember growing up and the essentials were bread, milk, and eggs. Like,
now it's lunch meat and toilet paper.
Yeah.
It's funny because we had the same experience. My mother and I went, and my mother's a healthcare professional, by the way. So, you know, she's not too freaked out because she understands how this shit works.
Mm-hmm.
So we went to the shops and we found an amazing variety missing, but like bread was gone, potatoes were gone, bell peppers were gone, cereal was gone, milk was not. Okay. My favorite cottage cheese, nowhere to be found.
Wow.
Like, and bog roll was missing. My mom's like, you know what? I know why they need the loo roll. Mm-hmm. It's so that when they're done making whatever the hell it is they're making with this odd collection of ingredients, they have something to catch the damage.
Yeah.
Like, there's no other reason. It's absurd. Like, I took a picture of my mother pointing at a sign of potatoes that were empty. Like you know, like the vat, like the sign says potatoes, and she was so excited about it.
Yeah. And I mean, luckily for me, I buy a lot of frozen stuff that I can freeze because being out and about so much, I need to have food that isn't going to randomly go south on me because it's like perishable. and a lot of the frozen stuff was still intact, so that was good for me. But like when I went to go find like when I went to go find like some round steak to make steak and gravy, which is something my dad taught me how to make
Mm-hmm.
years ago. All they had, like, and it was weird because like all the cheap stuff was gone. So like you either had to go without or buy like the super expensive fresh like, which I mean I'm not
Jesus.
complaining because like I mean it's better for you than the
But
cheap
that's
stuff.
just not right for vulnerable people who can't
Yeah,
afford the good shit.
yeah. And so I'm sitting there looking at this because usually for the steak and gravy you get the bottom round steak, which is like the crappy meat, so to speak. And all they had was like this high end like grass fed beef, and I'm like, no, I'm not going to make steak and gravy with this because I'm doing a disservice to the meat. And
Yeah.
like at a certain point, it's like it's not. Yeah, I'm going to get ostracized for.
Oh, I just wish people would show some empathy in all of this in
Mhm.
terms of their behaviors, because
Yeah.
Facebook posts aren't going to do it, but
Yeah.
it's so frustrating. Empathy and common sense.
Yep.
Common sense, an uncommon gift.
Yep. My mom was telling me a story. So a little background about me. I'm originally was born and raised in Chicago,
Mm.
and so I still got a lot of family up there.
Great.
My mom was telling me a story that my grandma went to the grocery store. It was over like Friday. It was like Friday, I believe. And her friend was with her, and she stepped away from her cart for 2 seconds, and some guy came in and raided her cart and put everything that he wanted that was in her cart in his cart. And so she went over there, found the guy that took all this stuff and was like, and confronted him, was like, hey, you took my stuff. I want it back. And luckily the guy was just like, oh, I thought the cart was just abandoned. I'm sorry. Luckily it wasn't like a huge thing, but it's like, it could have been like the guy could have been a huge douche and been like, prove it or something. And,
So, I mean, my dad grew up Soviet Union, right?
Yep.
And he's like seeing all these pictures on Facebook. He's like, the Soviet Union's back. All my sad memories have come home.
Yeah. Yeah.
With all the things that are missing. But no, like, I just, honest to God, it's a nasty pneumonia.
Mm-hmm.
If you get it as a healthy human being, you might not even notice it pass through you.
Yeah.
Why are y'all freaking out? And if you do get it, and you do get symptoms, and you're not immunocompromised or whatever, you're going to have a nasty flu.
Yeah.
It is viral. It is not treated by antibiotics. You have to wait it out for 2 weeks.
Yep.
It most likely will not kill you.
Yeah.
Most likely you don't even need to go to ICU. Like, I'm not a medical professional, so bugger all what I say, but as I understand it, what I do worry about is, I've got friends who, I've got a buddy of mine who I'm really close to, and he has a double lung transplant.
Mm-hmm.
He can't leave the house.
Yeah.
If he does, he'll die.
Yep. My dad just went through treatment for prostate cancer, and he's luckily it's all gone, but he's going through some treatments right now where his immune system's not at the hottest. And so it's like you can't tell him that, because us be damned if we tell him like, hey, you got to sit back a minute and chill, but
he's one of them, is he? He's like, no, I'll go and do what I like.
Yep. Well, I mean, he retired back in June, and then once he went through the treatments, he picked up a side gig teaching pilots how to fly. And so now it's just kind of like, nope, I signed up for this. I got to continue doing it.
Oh, for the love of Christ.
But, it's like, okay, Dad, you do you. Mom's got it covered. I don't have to deal with this craziness.
Yeah.
But
it's just, treating this self-isolation,
Mm-hmm.
like herd immunity is the best way to think about it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when people get vaccinated,
Yep.
it's not just so that they don't carry the virus and allow it to mutate within them even if they never display symptoms.
Yeah.
It's so that the people who might come in contact with them don't get that mutated virus.
Yep.
It's the same thing here.
Yeah.
It's, wash your hands, be hygienic, don't be stupid. Don't cause a fuss. Don't be like, the panic is doing more harm than the actual virus. I think people are violent. Like, it's Canada. We have gun laws. We have very strict gun laws.
Yeah.
There were guns drawn in Toronto over bog roll of all things. Like, what? I have no words. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah, I understand completely. But
oh my God, what must be going on with you guys? You guys have liberal gun control, shall we say?
It's actually not too bad. I've heard of like some fights breaking out, but other than that, it's really not bad.
No
like,
gunshots, no nothing.
No, not that I've seen. Like, I mean, I work for a local TV station, and we have our typical like gun homicides. That's a really weird
the
thing.
usual.
That's a really weird thing to say, but as far as like stuff related to the coronavirus, I haven't seen anything or heard of anything.
Oh, that's nice.
So
that's pleasant.
But that's not to say it's not happening. Like,
yeah,
and I think what's really helping it is that they're really monitoring and limiting the access to a lot of these things. So like right now, a lot of things, at least here in Central Texas where I'm at, everything has like limited hours, or like especially that like a lot of places are closing for 2 weeks. And so I think that has something to do with it. Like I just saw that Walmart, if they're open 24 hours, they're closing. So like Walmart's limiting their hours, and then like the local grocery stores are only working like half days.
So people are just being sensible.
Yeah, at least here in Central Texas.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've never been to Texas, but I've wanted to go for a long time. And as a Canadian, you have really preconceived notions about the States and Texas in particular.
Yeah.
I'm quite curious what it's actually like, because from what you're telling me, it's nothing like the cartoons.
No, it's I mean, there are definitely those areas. Like if you go into some of the smaller communities, it's like what you would consider typical Texas. But like for the most part, from my experience, it's just a bunch of very proud people. Like the people that are from Texas are proud to be from Texas, and like there's a lot of pride there. And one reason that I moved to Texas was I felt safe enough in the fact that if anything were to like really go down, like another civil war or some, like, because I mean everything's on full tilt right now with the politics and stuff. Not to go too deep into all that, because we don't like to make everything here too political, but with everything being on full tilt, it's like, okay, Texas ain't gonna take that shit. If I move to Texas, I feel a little bit safe because that Texas ain't gonna take that shit.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd be terrified to think of what shit they would take, though. And well, again, never been to Texas. Have no right to judge.
Yeah, like it's definitely a place you need to check out. There's a lot of history here. Like, like every place in America, it's got its ups, it's got its downs. But
every place in the world, really.
Yep. Exactly.
No place is excluded from we have crappy history, and we have great history.
Yep. Exactly.
How the world works. It's this way of things.
Yeah, I've only lived in Texas for about 4 or 5 months, but I'm glad I'm here.
What's the temperature like?
Right now, I don't have. Let's see. Let's pull.
Is it like in the plus or in the minuses?
It is currently 55 degrees Fahrenheit, so it's in the plus.
I don't know what that
But
is.
uh, yeah, today's going to be a little bit on the cooler side, but we're supposed to be getting some rain, so that's probably why.
You
Because I
make me
know,
jealous. It's -2 degrees here, Celsius.
yeah, uh, yeah. Actually, I was watching this vlogger. He's from Toronto, and his YouTube channel is really, his premise is really interesting. Like he'll go to iconic tourist traps and just kind of spend the day there and kind of vlog his experience. And his most recent one, he was in southern Texas. There's this huge gas station called Buc-ee's that everybody from Texas swears by.
Because the
And
gas is so good.
no, because they have like they make all their gas station food is made fresh and made like they have really good barbecue.
I'm sorry, you need to explain this to me.
So it's the world's largest gas station. They have like over 100 pumps or something to that effect. But on the
Jesus,
inside, it's like a grocery store. So if like you go in, it's like they have like
that's
a grocery
crazy.
store section, but then they also have like all this pre-made food, and supposedly the pre-made food is like top of the line, really good.
Have you gone?
I have not, because where I'm at, there's not a Buc-ee's within.
Oh wait, this is a chain?
Yeah, it's a chain. So there's like what like the one he was at was in South Texas. I'm in Central Texas, and then there's like a bunch in Dallas, which is about an hour and a half from where I'm at.
The
Uh,
American dream never ceases to amaze me.
Yeah, it's really weird, and I didn't like. I've driven past it a couple times, but I just thought it was like, oh, it's another gas station, cool. And then as I've started to talk to people, it's like, no, it's more than a gas station. You need to stop there one day. And just kind of traveling around the state, working with musicians, I haven't had a chance to stop yet, but maybe one day. I don't
Oh
know.
wow.
Like, it's just not that important to me to say. Like,
I don't know. I just go there just because I can't fathom
yeah,
such a place.
yeah, it's pretty insane.
Oh, there's so many things in America that like I have to admit, I don't know, maybe you'll cut this out. I don't know how political we can get here.
Okay.
After Trump got elected, our band decided not to tour in the States, even though we had one planned for safety reasons, because we've got so many folks of color
Uh-huh.
and such. And I personally decided that I wouldn't be frequenting the States,
Okay.
as I didn't feel quite so safe. Um, and in all of this, I ended up getting no choice.
Mm-hmm.
Because my then boyfriend, now ex, dragged me to the States. He was like, "Oh, I'm gonna take you on this surprise trip. Just bring your passport." I'm like, "Okay, I guess we'll go to the airport and fly somewhere not too far."
Mm-hmm.
No, he dragged me to the States, and the things I witnessed, like just odd thing, like the portion sizes,
Mm.
the way the supermarkets were laid out.
Yeah.
It's only a little bit south of Canada,
Uh-huh.
only a wee bit. It ain't that far.
Uh-huh.
You could drive there in a day, but it's so different.
Yeah.
Like,
Where in the States did you go?
oh God, if I could remember. I know we went to New York
Okay.
and somewhere beside New York.
Oh
Again,
boy, you went to New York? Well, I mean, I guess that would make sense. Like that's the popular.
well, he was from New York,
Oh,
so
okay, gotcha.
so he dragged me there, and then there was a place nearby New York that wasn't New York.
Okay.
Again, I wasn't really privy to the travel plans, as it was like this thing, oh, we're gonna go on a surprise adventure, and I was young and I was like, okay,
Let's
and
go. Yeah.
and then I went somewhere in the south, Arkansas,
Okay.
and again, like there's just things you don't like. You think it's only a little bit further down, like we speak the same language,
Mm-hmm.
we generally share a culture, like there's moments, but we share a culture.
Yeah.
um and even, I don't know, just every single just I must say, how bloody cheap the bras were in the States. I bought a bunch. Like,
That's
I was like, what? It's only $10 and it's not bad quality.
yeah.
You're getting ripped off here.
That's yeah. That's the thing here.
It's really funny the small things that are different,
Hmm. Not that I go
or the big things.
not that I go bra shopping or anything, but yeah, that's funny. That's
I'm
very
sorry, I didn't mean to put you on a spot there. I was
no,
just
you're
so
good.
shocked. I was like, the bras are so cheap.
I mean, it's
What else?
interesting. I would love, like, I'd like to be like, because to me, New York, when I think of coming to America for the first time, New York makes sense, but it's such a weird representation of, it's such a commercialized representation of what America is.
I didn't like it. I'll be honest.
And it's not for everyone. Like New York,
No.
like I'm probably gonna catch a little bit of heat from our New York fans and friends, but New
We
York,
love you.
yeah, but New York, and I'm sure they'll probably agree with what I'm about to say. New York is pretty much their own country. Like
Yeah.
they have a way of doing things.
And moving things and going things.
Yep, because they have to. But if you went to, like, you went to New York and then you said you think you went to Arkansas, that is two completely different cultures, and that, like, in and of that self, it's a culture shock.
Are you familiar with Stephen Fry by any chance?
No, I'm not.
He's a British TV presenter, and he did a documentary where this is like about 10 years ago, he visited every single state,
Mm-hmm.
and did a individual like episode about the state with like local stuff to showcase exactly that, because in England a lot of folk think America only comes in one flavor,
Mm-hmm.
and he showcased all 50.
Yeah.
And it's you've got it on the ball there, because like, oh, I also went to Boston. I like
Okay.
Boston.
Yeah. My sound engineer is actually from, and he's not from Boston, but like a suburb of Boston. So yeah.
No,
I
I
have
like,
haven't
of all the places, Boston I like the best.
yeah, I mean, that's kind of interesting because I hear some interesting stories about the way Bostonians are, and yeah, that's funny.
I don't know. I was pretty young.
Uh,
It was one of my first business trips. Like, I couldn't have been. No, I was really young.
Gotcha.
I started working when I was 14. Right, I started
Mm.
in the music industry very young, and so I went to go check out Berklee College of Music because I was
Uh-huh.
thinking of going, and then I saw the price tag and I thought otherwise.
Yep. Good choice. Good choice.
How do y'all folks attend school over there? How do
Uh,
you people get an education? It's so costly. Who can afford that?
a lot of debt. A lot of debt. Like, luckily for me, I started my schooling at a community college and it wasn't nearly as expensive. So I got my associate's degree there, and then I went on to a major, what they call a major university. And luckily, it was a state school, so it wasn't as expensive. But I still left college with about $40,000 in debt, and
That's
you
not
know,
much more than what somebody here would leave with.
okay, yeah, and luckily for me, it was I got it paid off like within 8 years, so like I'm good right now.
Wow.
But then again, like where my sister went to school, she went to a private Catholic school, and her debt was just mind-boggling.
Enormous.
Yeah, enormous because it was private, it was Catholic, it
Oh, yeah.
was yeah.
Jesus cost extra.
Yep.
That's a band name right there.
Yeah.
Jesus cost extra.
That's awesome.
No.
Actually,
Crazy.
that reminds me of a every year we do like a we go down to South Florida, and there's like a bluegrass festival that happens there. And about 2 years ago we went, and there was this trip kind of inspired a song. Like, I'm not musical, but my sound engineer and the guy that helps us, Brady, they're both of them are in a band together. And
Hi to
so,
those guys, by the way, and
yeah.
thank you if they're there with you.
Oh no, they're not. They live about 8 hours away from me. We get together. Yeah, they're not here with me at the moment, but
Well,
like,
still.
yeah, when I see them, I will let them know you said hi. And so we were driving, and there was like a little convenience store that had like a super expensive Bugatti car, like car that costs hundreds of thousands of dollars, in this little like bait and tackle convenience store. And so it inspired a song that I'm currently trying to teach myself how to play violin, so we could play a bluegrass song called Bugatti in a Bait Shop.
That's lovely.
So it's like, okay, I'm going to spend a year and a half, possibly 2 years teaching myself how to play an instrument just to play one song. And that's going to be the extent of my musical career.
100% worth it.
Oh, yes.
By all means, I wish you all the best of luck in that endeavor, and I would like to hear it upon completion.
Oh, it's like right now I'm just kind of going through learning how to how to read sheet music and learn like the basic fundamentals of everything.
Oh, that is brutal the first while.
Yeah, and then once I kind of get like the basic understanding of how things are set up, then I'll go invest in like a training violin or fiddle.
Honestly,
yep.
I don't know if you've got a teacher or nothing, but in my experience of learning notation, learning it by practicing it and immediately securing your finger positions to the notes at which you are trying to play and read is a far more effective way than doing them separately.
Okay.
If I don't know if your teacher will agree if you've got one, but definitely I found it much easier.
Okay. Well, my teacher right now is YouTube, so.
I see.
Yeah.
YouTube doesn't answer questions in that way.
But no, that makes perfect sense, and I will definitely start working towards that.
Do you guys have Kijiji over there?
I don't know what that is.
So probably not. Yeah. It's a secondhand online thing, but like,
okay. So is it like eBay almost?
No, not quite. Okay. It's like people in your area will be like, I've got a sofa, I'm selling it for $40. Pick up only, and you'll be like, okay, I'll come grab that from you.
Okay, so it's like Facebook Marketplace.
Yeah, but before Facebook Marketplace was a thing. I guess that's now the new Kijiji in a way, isn't it?
Okay.
Sorry. But like on there, you can get great instruments.
Okay.
Pretty cheap, and like honestly, even if you've got a piano in your house or a keyboard, learning the notes on the keyboard. I mean, it's not as ideal if your instrument is going to be violin, but just to get the sounds and stuff, because the best thing about sheet music is that when you can look at it and you read it like a book, it's so much easier than going C, A flat, D. Like it interferes.
Yeah, understood. I will definitely look into that and start making
unsolicited advice.
Sorry. No, it was totally solicited. I brought it up, and I really appreciate it. So one other thing that I kind of want to touch on really quick that really interested me was that you did a TEDx performance.
Yeah, those were like my first ones I did. I didn't think I would get it. I applied almost as a joke, going, nah.
Nobody's.
Oh.
Nice.
Yeah, that was lots of fun.
What was that experience kind of like?
Harrowing. Nice. I was 18.
Okay.
And it was one of like those things on my bucket list. I want to do a TED Talk. And so I did a performance about the instruments, and I wasn't really quite sure of myself at the time. So truth be told, I look back on it, I'm like, I would have done this completely differently had I been doing it now. But that's the joy of growing up. But yeah, it was the first time I was in front of so many people. But it was also the first time that I had played Be Mine in public, and it's like a really catchy song, and there's like a bit where people can clap along, and I didn't even have to tell them to clap along. They just did it themselves, and it was like this massive audience clapping along. Yeah, I think that gave me the bug for life.
Nice. Now, is that on like YouTube or anywhere that people can see
Yeah, it
those?
should be. It would be under my old name, the
Okay.
name I don't go by. But if you want to find it, you know, and you can put TEDx Mississauga. Don't ask me to spell that. I have.
Yeah, luckily I have your EPK right here, and it's telling me exactly how to spell it. It is Mississauga.
And I should be on there somewhere when my hair was still blonde and I was still going by a different name.
Okay, awesome. And so, what did you really learn from performing at TEDx or for TEDx?
Okay. Two different things. One, obviously, there were speakers there that had a lot to say, a lot more than my little 18-year-old ass could offer at the time.
Okay.
You know, and so from them, just sitting in the backstage and listening to them talk about their experiences, is a woman named Samra Safar, I think that's how you pronounce her name, and she was talking about the brutality of child marriage and how she had experienced it and how she was, you know, abused and just horrifically treated and shipped off to Canada at age 16 to a husband who was immeasurably older than her.
Oh, wow.
And how she got out of it and how now she has I believe she has a law degree and some manner of really, really high achievement degree and 2 kids and you know, she's got a book out and brilliant lady, learned tons from her. And then there's just the experience of performing for a proper audience in a proper place and, like, you know, not in a bar where everybody's drinking or, you know, I used to at the time perform a lot at a place called Cannabis Culture. So over there where you are at, as I understand it, cannabis not so legal. Here
It depends on what state you're in, but yeah.
Yeah. Here we had like a gray area before it was legalized, and at the time there were lots of cannabis bars, and they had amazing music scenes. So I was used to performing in front of like a crowd of 20 people who were all high off their tits. And here I was like performing in front of people in suits. It's very different.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, I don't know. It was a brilliant experience.
Nice.
Love to go again.
Yeah, I actually think I just found it, so I will make sure I link that video in the show notes. It's it's really, I'm kind of listening to it as we're speaking. It's and it's kind of got like, and you'd mentioned this in the, I think it was either the EP, it might have been the EPK, that it's got like a different vibe to it, like a electro dance vibe to it. I'm kind of picking up.
At the time, like a lot of the stuff I played then was very raw, like the electro trancey dancey kind of thing. If you get a chance to check out my video Pop, just P.O.P, you'll really get the dance vibe, and it's like there's a music video that goes along with it and everything that we shot in a week.
Awesome.
So I'm very proud of that one.
Nice. And what was that process kind of like, making you said it was like a music video, dance video type thing?
Oh my God, it was chaotic. So it's all done with folks from my school. And we all kind of were doing this amidst our, like, one of the more intense, like, midterm points, because we needed to catch the city when it wasn't freezing cold, and it was starting to get freezing cold, so like that would crack the flutes. So it was very chaotic, and like there was like a lot of improvisation amidst the planning. And getting up at 6 a.m. to catch all the shots, but it was lots of fun because I had a dancer on there Will. He was amazing.
Mm-hmm.
It's the idea was to catch all the parts of Toronto that maybe you never see if you're a tourist. You know, the bits where we hang out, where the young folk go to take a walk, or experience life. So we had to go to every single one of those places and shoot the exact same thing, and then it was edited
Nice.
to make it look like it was jumping from place to place as if it was a green screen. And the editing process was the guy who did it was amazing.
Nice. And what how hands-on were you behind the creative concept? Was that
very
okay?
Very, 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 very. I did the storyboarding. I did the treatment, and obviously I was in the thing, and I did all the scheduling. Like I was, I really like the organizing side of things. So
Nice.
That's where I was sitting
Awesome.
pretty.
Perfect. But I don't want to keep you too much longer because I know you got some people coming.
Yeah, I'm afraid so. I'm sorry. This is so enjoyable, though.
I wasn't like, and I say this to a lot of people. Like, I never know how these things are going to go, especially like this one in particular. We literally were introduced to each other less than 24 hours ago.
Yep.
I had very little context as to who and what you were about. And so luckily, you were able to send me like an EPK and like some more notes and stuff. So I was able to kind of have an idea of who you are. But, you just never know how the conversation is going to go, because some people are very comfortable in this type of setting, and other people are very traditionally trained. So like they have like a traditional media training, and they answer in like sound bites, which is an interesting.
Well, I felt that, and you will find that I believe that.
yeah. And it's like, okay. And then like I try and get them to go a little bit deeper, and it's like, wait a minute, am I allowed to talk about this? And it's like, well, I mean, I'm trying to get people to know you a little bit more instead of the predetermined media trained version of yourself,
I mean, if you have to, very selfish opinion of mine, if you have to go around being a programmed version of yourself, I'm not inclined to trust you all too much.
Yeah, exactly.
If I say something stupid and people catch on to it and give me heat for it, well, then I deserve it, don't I?
Yeah.
And if I don't deserve it, then I can say that I disagree, and, it can go from there. But there's no reason being scared of making mistakes.
Yeah, like, I mean, during this interview, I've made a few different ones. That's my bad.
I mean, we bashed New York pretty good, so that was nice.
No, I wouldn't say we bashed New York. I would say we critiqued it.
All right.
And, I mean, like, but anyways, so one thing, I'm going to ask you one question. It's going to be a very vague question, but I word it very vaguely so that you kind of have the freedom to take it where you want to take it, answer it how you want to answer it, kind of interpret it in your own way.
Okay.
So, why music?
Because I'm alive, and music, like any art form, is a consequence of life. You cannot live without expressing yourself. And if I don't do music, I'll die. Very simple.
Perfect. So what, like, I mean, obviously we talked about how the coronavirus is hindering everybody's shows. Do you have like a pending show schedule right now, or what's that kind of looking like?
At the moment, I do not. I'm mid-writing process, and I've put all shows to the side. But if people want to follow me on any of my social medias, just at Voimaa Music, and if you don't mind adding like the little thingy what's it in the show notes, I'd be grateful. Anything that's coming up is going to be on either Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. Those are my three main ones. I do have YouTube, but obviously nothing's going to get posted there in terms of come see me play. You'll see it after I'm done playing.
Yep, exactly. And one last question: where does the
Mhm.
name Voima come from?
It's the Finnish word for strength. When I was touring with my friends, they've got a Finnish band that I was, sessioning in. We had been up for about 24 hours and then got asked to do unexpected show,
Mhm.
like a pop-up show. And again, we'd been awake for 24 hours. We were high on sleep deprivation, and this
Yeah,
song Voima came up, and my friend was singing, and I was like, I found my new name.
nice,
Brilliant.
nice.
That's where it comes
And
from.
how long have you been performing as Voima?
Not long. So once my EP Voima came out, I switched my name, um, and that was in the summer.
Okay. So
Yeah,
like
I
that,
forget the month.
I gotcha. So that
It's all such a blur.
that EP was like the rebirth of your
Yeah,
musical career.
yeah,
Is that fair to
absolutely.
say?
Because prior to that, I was doing a little bit of electronic-y type stuff,
Okay.
but a lot of it was still the new age kind of, you know, wavy improvisation thing. And
Mhm.
Voima had a purpose. The EP had a purpose. It was me and 5 songs. It was, uh, you know, an introduction letter to the world, shall we say?
Awesome.
That sounds very pretentious, but best I
No,
can do.
it makes perfect sense though.
I hope
But
so.
I want to thank you so much for giving me this time. I didn't mean to take up almost an hour and a half of your day or of your
Oh my
morning,
lord.
but it's been a great conversation, so I really appreciate it.
Oh,
it
likewise. Thank you so
it's
much for being.
flown by like crazy. But hit them again with your social media just so they know where to go.
Yep. So you can find me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Where bleh. I'm gonna redo that if that's okay.
Nope, you're good.
You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Voima Music. So go ahead, hit me up. Honestly, if you just search hashtag redhead flute girl, I will also cop up.
Okay, that's
I have very bright red hair, and
okay.
that's how I'm always remembered. So it's how I'm hashtagged.
Okay, hey, you're owning it. That's awesome.
Oh yeah, no blood of my enemies, my friend.
Yeah, awesome. But thank you again so much. Thank you for everybody for tuning in and giving it a listen. And we will see you all later.
Cheers, bye.